On this episode of Beasts in the Wild, the Canis lupus familiaris lies in wait. Its powerful natural camouflage allows it to appear as a lump of grass in the distance. It's perfectly still, motionless as the prey approaches. Its muscles are taut. The beast is ready to pounce on unsuspecting prey or run away!
Welcome to episode 7, and this is it. This is our final episode before we get on the road. We leave tomorrow. Literally tomorrow. Ouch. It's getting kind of real. Actually, it's more real than I like to even think about, but it's real.
Yeah, it is.
You know, it's interesting. A few weeks ago, Libby interviewed me about retirement, and I've noticed that even though she just retired a few weeks ago, that you're starting to get a little bit philosophical. And I think you're going to be sharing some of the lessons that you have learned, some of the things that you have pondered in this last few weeks since you retired with us today. Yeah. Okay.
And I'll be still wearing the orange.
Yes.
Which I'll explain.
Yeah. She'll be wearing the orange. She'll explain it. Okay. And a very standard thing, this will be something that while we're on the road, I will be doing a minimum of once a week. More often than not, probably once every 4 days, is sprouting. Because it is just a really simple, fast, easy way to get some healthy, nutritious pieces into our diet. And it takes very little effort, so I'm going to go through my sprouting with you today. And you're all ready to get philosophical with us?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Well, it's interesting. A few weeks ago, you sat me down in the shop and decided to talk a little bit about my career and retirement. Fair's fair. So I'm going to have a chance to sit down and talk to you about things. When we met, you were in broadcast school. And the next thing I know, we're married and expecting a family, and you kind of put all of your education on hold, although for a year you did go back to school and take some nursing training. What was the thought about getting into nursing?
Oh, nursing was always one of my many, many careers that I wanted to do.
Right.
The reason broadcasting was put on hold was because you were in broadcasting and you were a few years ahead in your career, and you were in major market. I would have had to find a minor market.
A job someplace in a small market, right?
Yeah, small market.
Yeah.
And so I didn't think that was feasible. I looked at it logically, and nursing you can do part-time, you can do relief, you can do. There's so many more opportunities to use nursing. And so I did that, but there's a season for all things, and that was not the season.
Right.
By the end of the year, I had my name tag upside down. I had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 10-month-old when I started.
The other thing about it, though, is I really recognized that you kind of took one for the team and put your schooling on hold and raised the family and helped me get through school. You know, that was an unbelievable support to get me through that. And then when our youngest was in high school, there was a change in thought process that you'd like to go back to school. And so you did your first degree in
Bachelor of Applied Child Studies.
Okay.
It was a brand new degree that was actually only in a couple of places in Canada.
And you worked in that area for a short period of time.
Yes.
And then it was this decision that there was more out there for you, and so you went back to school and picked up another degree, this time in
social work.
Right. And what was the thought that sort of drove you towards wanting to get into social work?
Okay, I worked with preschoolers who had developmental issues, and they're pretty much the silent disabilities, speech, language, physical movement. What I said, they need a little push to get them up to speed. And because you work with a child, you work with the family. And I really enjoyed working with the family, and I thought I'd like to do that more. But I would need something that's really recognizable. My child studies wasn't all that recognizable. People thought I only worked with preschoolers or daycare things. So I knew that in social work, I could get a job.
Now, in social work, I was surprised. I have to tell you, I was surprised when you picked up a job at the drop-in center. It was a place that, if I can be really candid, just kind of creeped me out. But all of a sudden, you're there and you're working with the homeless population. I see you're wearing your orange shirt.
Yes.
Again.
Still.
Thankfully, you have 5 of them, because for a little while there, I was thinking, I think she's been wearing that same shirt for more than a month. But what is the significance of the orange shirt?
The orange shirt was my sort of uniform. When I first started, they wanted us adult care workers. That was the name that was assigned to my position. It was a frontline position, so you work directly. You're in among the people that are accessing the shelter system, and they wanted to be able to spot the staff, and the staff be able to spot other staff.
I think you can see this shirt from space.
Yeah, it was hated, absolutely hated. I didn't mind because I'm not a clothes horse, and it's a free T-shirt.
Right.
And all I had to do was provide jeans and closed shoes and good runners. That was my thing. So.
Now, you ended up spending almost a decade
Yeah.
working with the homeless population. If you could sort of narrow it down to 1 or 2 significant things that you learned while you were there.
Well, obviously I lasted that long. I loved working with this population. It was a population I didn't even think I'd ever be, because I kept getting finding my way into preschoolers, which I absolutely love. I did do a stint in a Willie Roper Hull school that were for kids that couldn't cope well in the mainstream. I see the DI, the drop-in center, was a continuation, because recovering from trauma is not easy, especially severe trauma, and especially when it happens when you're very young. And one of the main things I really realized was that anyone at any point in their life could become homeless. A billionaire can become homeless. People who work paycheck to paycheck, they're closer to homelessness than the billionaire, but it can happen fast. Unfortunate event, bad decisions, and everything is gone.
I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but I want to go just back to something that you were talking about, the dealing with trauma. And that's another thing. After working in the DI for several years, you went back to school again and picked up a master's level certificate in trauma-informed care. Is that what it was?
Trauma-informed practice.
Trauma-informed practice. Okay, so what exactly is that? Fancy word for what?
It's how we should treat everyone. It's understanding that people have backgrounds that we don't know. It's understanding that their response to things may be rooted not in bad parenting or they're just rude. It's based in something. There's many books that are really good that talk about this and describe how it affects not just your brain, but your body and your DNA. So it affects that. And unfortunately, I can go on for hours.
Yeah, I know. I've heard you. No, I'm just...
Oh, yeah, now I remember you said, what does that mean? It's understanding, but it's not putting up with the crap. Yes, they are being rude, but your response, what is trauma-informed care, is treating them with respect, keeping their dignity. And that may be, the owly neighbor, because we don't know what's going on in their lives. There's many functioning alcoholics, functioning drug addicts that hold down jobs, but it's how you respond to them. Fighting fire with fire doesn't work in relationships. So instead of just saying, get out, or go away, drop dead, whatever, you could say, what's going on? Because when your neighbor is crabbing about your garbage cans being out on the being out front for more than an hour past pickup time, there's something else going on.
Right.
When couples argue over which way the toilet paper goes on, there's something else going on. So if you ask, what's going on? You will get an answer.
Right. Now, I also want to say how proud I was of you that you never brought work home with you. I mean, you would end work, you'd come home and you're doing your thing. You're working on your hobbies. It never seemed that whatever was going on at work was creating issues when you came home. And I think that is rare for a lot of people. Was there a strategy that you put in place to kind of help do that, or are you just really good at hiding it?
Oh, I'm good at hiding. When I first started at the drop-in center, I was relief. I had a choice of part-time, full-time, or relief. And I said, I've never worked in this industry. I've worked with preschoolers who have stable homes. And so this was new. These were adults. And I could work as many hours as I wanted. And when I started feeling kind of out of sorts, I would pull back for the next month. What helped for most of the years that I was working full-time was the people I worked with, my coworkers. And things were getting a little sideways. And I came into work and said, I realized, who am I here for? I'm here for those guys.
Right.
That's what I'm here for. What happens, the politics, which happens in every business, that's not my business. It's above my pay grade. And when you retired, I started taking the train. So it was about 45 minutes to get from there to there. And when I drove, it was the car time. That was my switchover time. So I used that time that I wasn't at home or at work to just set my brain focused.
What was the response from coworkers and from clients when you announced you were retiring earlier this year?
I thought it was important to tell them not just disappear. My retirement date was set for January 15th, and I thought it was important to tell them ahead of time, so I started telling the key the ones that I had developed relationships over the years, that I was leaving. They were happy for me, and they were also sad to see me go, because I had often gotten, and I'm not just blowing my own horn, because this is what everyone should be getting. I can trust you. If you can't do something, you tell me. If you think you can't, but may be able to, you tell me. You're upfront, you tell me what's going on. So they were sad to see me go. I did get a few, well, it's about time. Never knew really how to take that. They'd ask me, what am I going to do? A couple of them asked if I was going to sit on my front porch and tell kids to get off the lawn. I said, no, I'm going to do something that I've always wanted to do. I want to travel. I haven't been able to travel as much as I wanted, or we have not traveled as much as we wanted, outside of work commitments. And I'm going to do that. And they thought that was a great idea.
And in order to do this, however, the planning for this trip has been ongoing for several years now. Why is the planning component of this important to you, and what are the things that you did to plan for this trip?
I think it started after our second child was born, or while I was pregnant with him, because it takes a while for it, that we could see in the future, and that being the radio disc jockey is going to keep us in the same spot. We're not going to increase our wages. So we decided Steve was going to go back to school. And as I mentioned earlier, I had a lot of career wants, but I couldn't decide. But Steve knew what he wanted to do. And so he went back. He got his Bachelor of Fine Arts. And then, thanks to a professor, he ended up doing his Master's of Fine Arts. And then he became program director, like from disc jockey to program director. Then he got on to post-secondary, which have a great pension plan.
Yes. Yeah.
And because of other things that happen, we're sitting okay for our retirement. And so that planning way back in the 80s got us here.
So I guess sort of a final question. We got this trip coming up. I mean, we're literally leaving tomorrow, and so when we look at this, did this trip, knowing that it was coming, did that help you in the retirement process because you had something really big to look forward to? Or was it the plan from 10, 15, 20 years ago that sort of guided all of the decisions to get to this place?
Well, all the decisions prior to this did help. Being able to fulfill a dream. And yes, having this big trip ahead, people say, well, if you're leaving in April, why don't you stop in end of March? I said, well, we have things that need to get done.
The first big downsize, which will be followed by a second one when we get back, when we realize just how little we need in order to exist. Well, I'm going to conclude this by saying I'm really proud of you for your career choices. You've done well, and it's nice to know that every single day for your entire career, and even before that, that every day you could look at that day and say, today I made a difference. And I think that's really important, and super proud of you. Well done.
Thank you.
Today is all about homemade sprouts, and for our trip, I am not going to be able to take our usual large sprouter, so I've had to rethink this and come up with a better plan. What I've ended up doing is going to a jar method. Now, I did try a jar method probably 18 years ago, and it didn't work very well for me, and I think largely because I was very busy at the time. So I'd get the seeds going in the quart jar, and then I would forget about them, and then 3 or 4 days later I would come back and find having to scoop them out and scrape them off the side of the bottle.
So I went with a different system that's quite a bit bigger, which I will show here in a couple of moments. Somebody came up with this idea, and I love these. I bought 4 of these, and they are suitable for wide mouth jars. It's a nice thin screen on there, keeps everything in. And I also noticed that there were units with these lids that also come with these little stands to keep them at an angle. I decided I really didn't need that because a rolled up tea towel works just as well as those stands. So this is the method that we'll be going through today. Now our older sprouter is quite large, takes up a lot of space, and we just knew that in the RV we were not going to have room for it. This has been our main sprouter for the last 15 years. It does need a massive cleaning. In fact, I did not use it this season at all, knowing that we were not taking this on our trip. What I liked about this one, and the reason I went with this, is that it has a reservoir in the back you fill with water. You plug it into a timer like you would use for Christmas lights, and it comes on and mists the seeds automatically. There's a little drain tube that you just have hanging off into a sink, and all of your sprouts are going to go in these little trays. And so I can have up to 5 different sprouts going on at the same time, or 5 of the same kind. It doesn't really matter. I made up some little tiny signs that I would just lay on the top outside of this. Every week it would be disassembled, if you will, and sanitized, which we're going to talk about in just a couple of moments. The only thing that I came to not enjoy about this sprouter is the filter. It became increasingly difficult for me to find replacement filters in Canada, and as a result, I've had to take this filter apart and clean it and wash it and clean it and wash it to make sure that it stays active. But this has been a phenomenal unit for us, and what I liked about it is while I was working, I didn't have to babysit it. There'd be enough water in here to last for several days, and it would just do its thing. And then whenever I was ready for sprouts, if I put them, every day, put a different sprout in here, or if I knew I was making something like a chili or a stir fry, I could make sure that I had particular pieces, beans and stuff like that I was sprouting for those units. So I really like this one, but as you can see by the size of it, this is going to take up a lot of room and a lot of empty space. Hence, we're rethinking this and going with the jar method. These are my preferred sprouting seeds. It's a company called Mums, and they are located in Saskatchewan in Canada. And I have found that, well, at least according to their website, they go through many steps to make sure that their seeds are completely safe and healthy. I will say that we did have some sprouting seeds several years ago that were just in a plastic bag with a little sticker on them to say what they were. They didn't look like they were commercially packaged. And we did have one batch that actually molded on us. And I was quite surprised about that because it was the same process we had been using for some time. So I decided to go with a company that at least I felt was doing due diligence to make sure that the seeds were good. There's a lot of these that I have found have become particular favorites for us. I've got red clover, love that on sandwiches. This one called Sandwich Booster, which is clover, alfalfa, radish, and mustard. It's got a little bit of a tang to it, love that one. These broccoli sprouts, oh my gosh, they are so good. Alfalfa, which is pretty standard. This bean mix and this ancient grain mix, I will quite often use this in chilies. I use this one in salads. I've got one here that I really like. It's quite spicy, however, and Libby's not a huge fan of the amount of spice. I love it, but this is a daikon radish sprouts, and they're great. And I just made some mung beans last week, and again, those went into a stir fry. They're absolutely fantastic. For today's demo, I'm going to be doing 2 sprouts. I'll be doing an alfalfa and a red clover. For anything food related, it is important that we sanitize our area and that we sanitize the instruments that we're using. So that one, in this case, will be the jar, but also the spoon that you might be using if you're using one. Any of the equipment that is going to come in contact with the seeds needs to be sanitized. Now we have a variety of options for sanitizing. For sanitizing jars in this method, this is the same method I use for all of my jams and all of my jellies. So the jars before I put jam in them, the jars before I put jelly in them, have all been put into a water bath and steamed for a period of about 20 minutes. So in this case, I have a small colander in the back and enough room for a couple of jars in the front. And because I have not tested the plastic on these lids, I don't want them actually touching the bottom surface. And so hence the small colander, I'll be putting the lids into the colander and letting them steam. We're going to bring this up to a boil, and then we will let that go for about 20 minutes to get these jars ready to go. So heat comes on and we'll bring this up to a boil. Once this comes to a boil, I set a timer for 20 minutes. I've also added the spoon that I'm going to be using to take the sprouts out of the bag and put them in the jars, and I've added that to get steamed as well. After 20 minutes, these are going to be very hot, so use some gloves or a jar lifter to get them out of the pan. I'll let the jars just sit for a few minutes to cool down because they are very hot when they come out of the water bath. As far as the amount of seeds that I'm using, in the old sprouter I would use a full tablespoon, 15 milliliters. I don't in these jars. It's close, but it's not quite a full tablespoon. So something about that amount. And to keep these, because I'm doing a red clover and the seeds look very similar, I have to make sure that I keep the jars identified as I go through. So I'm doing these alphabetically. This is the A jar. And this is the R jar. And again, not a full tablespoon in each one. Now we're going to fill these with water, yay high, both of them, and then let that sit for about an hour. And I will put the lids on. And we'll let these sit for about an hour. After the initial hour of soaking, I'm just going to drain these. I try to drain these so that the seeds kind of stay along a line. It's not really necessary, but I try. I also take just a little tiny sticky note, A for alfalfa, and put that on the bottom of the jar. RC for red clover, and put that on the bottom of the jar. Once they actually start to sprout, it's very easy to tell them apart. Now, at this point, I'm just using this tea towel. I'm just rolling this up to give myself a little bit of room. And one tea towel is perfectly fine for 2 jars. And then I'm just resting these jars on the tea towel, like such. Any extra liquid is going to drain out, and it's going to drain here onto the tea towel, and that's fine. Now, as far as the sprouting process and the rinsing process. At a minimum, these need to be rinsed every 12 hours. I prefer to go more than that, and usually around 4 to 6 hours throughout the day. If I see them, just a quick rinse, drain, put them back on the towel. The most important parts of the sprouting process are the water and the airflow. So because these are a mesh, we get lots of air in the jar, and as long as we keep these moist, we will be fine. Also, I don't leave these in direct sunlight. Right now, they're getting some sun from the two windows that are right here, and I will be just taking these and putting them in a more of an isolated area of the kitchen. And then over the course of the next 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 days, I'll just be rinsing this whenever I think about it. Like I said, 4 to 6 hours apart, and then we will watch the sprouts grow.
This is day 3. Unfortunately, I lost the footage for days 1 and 2, and we are so close to leaving that I no longer have time to do another batch before we leave. I dragged you down here for another taste test. I seem to be doing this a lot lately. And this is my first attempt in a jar of alfalfa sprouts. Wow.
Oh, they taste a lot nicer than the ones in the store.
They really do.
But we haven't had ones from the store for years.
Oh, we really haven't. No, we've been sprouting for many, many years. But knowing that we were needing to have these, I bought 4 of the little units to be able to make 4 different types of sprouts. These are the lids. They're very handy. And I didn't bother with, as I mentioned in the video, I didn't bother getting the little stands for them because I don't need them. I just use a rolled up towel. These are actually really good. I mean, they're very intense. That's a really intense alfalfa sprout. I quite enjoy
Fresh
these.
tasting.
So just another little method to be able to have some healthy alternatives in our diet while we are out on the road.
Well, thank you for sharing your philosophy. It is heartfelt and deeply needed, and thank you for doing that. And sprouts. What can we say about sprouts? We eat them all the time and have been for ages. I was really concerned that giving up our great big sprouter was going to be hard, but I really discovered that it's really simple to just, do this in the jars. So.
And you don't have such a volume of sprouts to deal with.
When the kids were home, having the 5 trays of sprouts on a rotation, like every day I'd start a new tray. So we had sprouts all the time, but we went through them that much. When it was just the 2 of us, the large sprouter ended up being empty a lot of times.
And the sprouts would go bad.
Yeah. So having it in the jars is just making it nice and simple, nice and easy. And we've got the extra couple of tops that we can have when I know that I'm going to be doing a stir fry or something later in the week, so I can make some specialty sprouts for a particular meal. So I think this is going to work out very well. And listen, thank you for being on this journey with us thus far. And tomorrow we will start our first trip. We are heading off to Dinosaur Provincial Park in Alberta, and that will be our first stay, and we'll be hanging out there for about 10 days. I don't know when the next episode is going to get posted because it really depends on when we have Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. But we'll do our best to keep you up to date with what we're doing. You good?
I'm good.
Are good.
Let's go. Tally ho.